So I'm going to get started on the paper drawing, and I just want to. There are some views definitely that are a little bit more interesting than others, so you're going to have to play around with that. I think I like that, so I'm going to go with that. Because I don't have two cameras set up, because now Google Meets does not allow people who are not using a school district of Philadelphia email, supposedly. Last year I was able to get on with my personal Gmail account as a second person, and it may not let me do that this year because of the security issues, because of those clowns at the beginning of the year. I think that that has become eliminated as a choice of things I can do. But maybe I can still do it. We'll see. So I'm gonna turn my document camera back on, and you're gonna see me for a second. All right. I'm taking a pretty hard pencil, like a 2H pencil. As you see, this is a 2H. You want this crumpled paper to fill most of the space of your paper. You don't want it to be only like an inch small in the middle. That would be sad. But I'm just going to use really just rough sketch lines to just figure out where I want to draw my crumpled paper model. I like the size of this. I like the positioning of it on my paper, so I think I'm going to go with this. Now I'm going to go in with some slightly darker lines, and what I want to do is put in a little bit more of a detailed silhouette. So, okay, still sketching. But if you don't have like the little bumps going in and out and all these little things in the silhouette, and when you go to draw your inside lines, the inside of your paper form, there'll be nowhere for those lines to kind of hook up to, somewhere on the outside line. So you got to be a little bit more accurate at this point. Okay, and you can't be vague like with these sketchy lines. That's what we did first. Okay, and definitely expect to erase. You're not going to get, something's going to be drawn too big. Something's going to be drawn out of scale, and some parts are going to be too big, some parts are going to be too small. And I can barely see this part of the drawing because it's in such deep shadow that value looks almost the same as the value in my shadow. So I'm just going to do the best I can to see if I can make out the edges. I'm just tracing the contour line or the edges. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit more specific here. Okay, now this is kind of an inside line, so I'm drawing right now an inside line, and I don't know if I'm drawing it correctly. I'm just drawing something, and I'll go back and change it if it's wrong. This is an outside silhouette line, and if I go back and look at every single contour line drawing I drew from every single class, I know that they're all going to be different. They'll be similar because it's the same object, but they're also going to be different because I'm definitely not a machine, and I'm going to draw them a little bit different each time, which will mean there's going to be mistakes on there, definitely. So now I'm kind of fixing the shape on the bottom here to be a little bit more similar to what I see in the actual, photograph. So when you set up your still life, definitely take a photograph. definitely make your adjustments. This bottom part, I think I made this part is longer. I think it should extend down a bit more. And then there's this piece here. So now I generally have my outside lines. Now there are some, if you look at the picture, there's some major lines going across this shape on the inside. And one of them is this line. And this is a classic example of what I'm talking about, how an inside line connects to a point on the outside. So this kind of connects to this point right here. See that? Okay. Now I see this really dark kind of triangle or trapezoid shape here. So that starts right here at this point and kind of curves around and connects to this point. You see that? Because of the way that this paper is kind of a crisp piece of paper, it's not like a fabric. You know how fabric is smoother? If you wrinkle up a piece of fabric most of the time, unless it's linen, like it's a stiffer material. Fabric doesn't hold wrinkles the same way as, let's say, paper does. And the wrinkles will always appear to look like triangles and trapezoids and squares. And find those little trapezoids and squares and all those shapes within the shape. Okay, I see this little stripe right here, so I'm going to draw that. And then after I draw that, I could go back and shade in the correct value. Sometimes those areas have transitions in tones. So this triangle right here, is this triangle area compared to that triangle area? I want to just test what you are seeing. Is this darker or lighter than this triangle area? So this area is much darker here, and then it gets dark right here too, but then over here, right underneath it, it gets lighter. So it goes from like dark to light this way. It's kind of funny how it's got a dark kind of thick line right here. So if you see kind of a thicker line of shading, draw it. I mean, shade it in just like that. So just copy what you see in your still life. I prefer that you actually look at your real still life. So I want you to send me a picture of your still life though. That's how I know I can check if you are accurate or not. Send me a picture of the still life as your first file. And then when the assignment goes up. And then send me a picture of the actual finished drawing. So I want you to look for shapes here. I see a kind of weird shape that looks like this over here. So I'm going to draw that kind of strange organic shape. Most of the shapes do kind of look, actually, most of the shapes look geometric because they kind of look like squares and triangles. You see this large blank area here? There's a lot going on over there. So there's a huge black, dark shape right here. I'm going to draw the edge of that shadow shape. I'm going to call it a shadow shape. Just do the best you can, and it goes kind of something like that. Then it kind of comes up and there's like a little rectangle, and it's a fold in the fabric, and then there's like a little rounded bump that comes down, and then there's a little bit shallower bump, and then that comes down like this, and then that goes in like that. Okay, now that I've done that, I feel like something is way off because this triangular area here it should be right over here. So either I'm going to have to push all of this and push this over, because I think that this may be a little bit too wide. So I think I'm going to push that over and then move this little triangular piece over here. So like I said, you're going to have to make some adjustments. So this is a little triangular piece here. This is another little piece, then that little triangular piece that touches this piece is going to go over here, and I'm going to kind of move it over. So I'm just going to adjust that right now, like that. And then here, like, I can't even see really well. And so this is the perfect example of where looking at the actual paper model is much superior to drawing from a photograph. Right now, I am drawing from a photograph because I want to draw exactly what you're seeing, because what I see in front of me is slightly different, slightly, but I want to make sure I'm drawing exactly what you see so we could talk about the same things that we see. But if it was the real thing, I could get close up and I would be able to see the information right here in this dark spot. But when you draw from a photograph, and let's say you got rid of the paper and you threw it away, you can never go back and really check, what is that? I don't understand what's going on there. You will never be able to really check on that. Unless you took multiple photographs, you could do that so that in different lighting situations, that would be smart too. And then you could go back and be like, oh, let me look at that lighter version where I used my flash or something like that. That would be kind of smart to do. And that depends on how good you are as a photographer. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of you do Instagram and stuff, and you probably have beautiful Instagram pages, and your phones are very good. Nowadays, your phone cameras are pretty good, so you might be able to do that kind of photography work for this class. So I drew this back half now. This is like that shady area, so I'm just going to put a little bit of a scribble right there to remind me that that's that shady dark area. And then I want you to also draw a little bit of the background. So I'm going to draw the shadow next. So this is the shadow right over here. I'm keeping an eye on the time, ladies, so we have about 5 minutes. So I'm going to draw the shadow underneath my object. Okay, it's not that big. I'm going to go like that. Okay. And then there's like a little weird angle here. And of course, it's going to take the shape of the paper. I mean, that's the way that you should shade it in. If your shadow seems to be getting much lighter, it's like a mid-tone here, then go for it and make it lighter over there. And then back here, the shadow takes a shape like this, takes on this kind of a shape. And then there's like this little weird part right here. Okay, so draw everything exactly as you see it to the best of your ability. I'm not saying you're going to make it exactly, because I told you every single one of my drawings from all the different classes, they're all different. They're all different. Like this one is different from this one. They're all different. They're all slightly different. So don't stress too much about that. So then you're going to go back in and draw some of those little shapes that you see in there. And you could put like a little bit of shading to remind you, okay, that's going to be a little bit darker in there. Or this little light area, this area is going to be that little stripe area is going to be a little darker in there. This is going to have a slightly darker kind of shape in here, like this. And that's going to be a little bit darker, so you can do a little quickie, like temporary little sketch of the shadow. Over here, this is going to be pretty dark in here, bit by little bit. Don't rush. No need to rush. And just kind of, this class should be a class where you just slow it down and you really take the time to look at something. Try to find a quiet place. I really wish that you can all have like a quiet place to do your schoolwork. Sometimes I struggle to find a quiet space where I can really focus and do whatever I need to do. And if you are not in that situation, just do the best you can. Because some of us do have a lot of little kids and siblings running around because they're at home. Do what you can to find a quiet place for yourself. And it's hard because we can't go to the library or can't go somewhere out of the house right now. So that's I'm saying is, if you decide you want to do a little bit of cross-hatching, guess what? You got to do the whole thing with cross-hatching. So keep it consistent. Don't suddenly switch to like stippling or something like that. It's just going to look like a mess. So stick with one style of shading. But most commonly, my students will do the scribble shading. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to shade my shadow. And I'm doing that because I need to make sure that everything else is either darker or lighter compared to something. So I think the most striking thing about this still life is how black the shadow is. So I'm going to get a 9B pencil, and I'm going to start shading my shadow. And the darkest shading is actually on this form here. So I'm just using some scribble shading. So when you do your scribble shading, it kind of looks almost like I'm just filling it in, like you would fill in a coloring book almost, because I drew out everything. But then we'll go back in and clean up the edges or make the edges fuzzy if they're not sharp. I do see a little bit of a light value in here, even though it's kind of dark. So then I have to make this a little bit darker. And as I'm noticing things that I may have left out in my drawing, I'm just drawing them in. Okay, right in here, I also see a little dark area, and I kind of pre-shaded that area with a lighter value. But now I'm going to go back and make it a little darker. Okay. It's also a little dark right here, so I'm just kind of hitting all the really dark places with my 9B pencil while I have that out. Okay, there's a little bit of dark shading under here. And certainly over here on this side, my umbra is kind of dark under here. Okay. Now, is there any other dark areas? Well, there's a medium light area, medium dark area here. So dark mid-tone area, as it's called. So we'll put that one in. Okay. This is a pretty dark area right over here. And let's see if there's any other little dark areas here. There's something that was not drawn over here. So now I need to go ahead and draw that, because I'm going to shade it and there's definitely some information missing. fold right there. Is there any information missing here? Yes, I do see some information that's missing there. I'm going to take a 2B pencil. So that's dark here. We're gonna have a little bit of a, not really dark, it's just a very light gray. So I'm gonna just put a little bit of light gray in here. That's a striking area of dark here. Then we have a lighter gray area here. And then we have this darker gray area here. So I'm going to grab my 2B pencil and just make a coarse shadow that's a little darker right here, just a little, and then make this a tiny bit darker in here. And also make this darker here, just so that it doesn't look, it looks different from that. And I know that this is, the lightest area is going to be on here for my paper. This area here has a little darker area. And just in general, kind of a medium value area. So I'm going to get an HB pencil, which is like a number 2 writing pencil, and just kind of fill that in with medium gray in here. I saw this kind of interesting shape here, so all I did was I just copied it. I just drew it. You know, whatever you see, you're just kind of copying from real life. Just think of it, you know, it's not as hard. You're looking at something, and it's not as hard as making something up from your imagination. Okay. This area right here has a lot of complex forms, so let's do that. this little shape here is pretty dark here. Is it possible to do a picture just with the number 2 pencil? Absolutely. You can still have realistic shading. Will it have the range of shading that someone with a a bunch of graphite pencils will have? Will it have that range? No. So that person who has a 6B will definitely get a darker black than a person who just has the number 2 pencil. So in some ways, yes, there is some things that you can't do, but you could still get a pretty decent drawing. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my blending tool, or I could just take a piece of paper towel and fold it up into a little blender. So I'm going to get a piece of paper towel and I'll show you the difference. Here's just a regular Bounty paper towel. And I'm just going to fold it in half and fold it in half again and keep folding it and fold it into a little triangle. Eventually, when I get a square, I just fold it into a triangle, and I can make a stump and fold it again if I can. If you have the strength to do that, you just fold it again and get a little stump like this. And this are not that much different. They really are not. This one can be a little harder, of course. But this one is good for just overall smoothing and shading. So I'm just going to go in and just use my pointer finger to push down on the tip of this little blending tool I made from a piece of paper towel. That's all it is. And I'm going to just blend some of my values here. And right in here, this is the medium part of my shadow. Okay, and I could just take whatever is on the paper towel and put some of that in a lighter area and just kind of spread that pencil around. You don't want it to look too smudgy, but if you do get it too smudgy, what you can do is take an eraser and just kind of clean up the edges where the shadow has kind of a very sharp look to it. So, or if the shadow you didn't erase too much, just draw it back in like that. Okay, now I'm going to go into the really dark areas. And if the shadow has a fuzzy edge, then you could use the paper towel to your advantage. Just make the edges of the shadow kind of fuzzy and it'll look just like what you see. There we go. I'm going to take my drawing stump or blending stump and I'm going to go in and do these little areas in here.